But it was a good meal. We just got a very nice kick out of it. So, all right, cool. So now it's 5. So we're going to go live here. Let me just put, yes, very yummy, simultaneous squeeze. Boom. So welcome everybody. Today we're going to be talking about treating chronic illnesses and diseases with vagus nerve stimulation. We're going to be talking about ultrasound today, some of the incredible things that we've found in the last few months. So giving you guys kind of a quick update on that. But before we do that, we're going to do the simultaneous squeeze, which is just a really quick vagus nerve stimulator practice that only takes no more than 15-20 seconds, okay, to actually do. So how it works is we're going to take a deep breath in, take another sip of air at the top. So 2 big sips of air. You're going to hold it and squeeze it like that, squeeze down, and then hold that for 5 seconds, and then make a soft, slow exhale like a just like that, okay? And then that's it. And then we'll get into the real meat and potatoes for today. So here we go. In 3, 2, 1, breathe in, sip of air, hold and squeeze. Now slowly exhale for 5 seconds. Very good. Nice. I love that feeling. Always a good feeling. So cool. So I'm excited to give this talk today primarily because we're seeing a lot of trends happening in the world. Basically that people seem to be getting sicker and sicker, faster and faster, and at a younger and younger age. I myself am no exception. Unfortunately, a few years ago, I actually caught, we aren't fully sure exactly what happened, but I came down with an autoimmune condition completely out of nowhere, called ulcerative colitis. So I myself, even eating super healthy, exercising daily, working on my mindset, due to some of the food that I was eating, I believe I was on a carnivore diet, so I was eating red meat basically all the time. I thought, carnivore, people talk about it all the time. It's great. It was recommended to me. It was a big fail, okay? I did it for 6 months. It made me quite sick. First time I ever had to go to the hospital was after being on the carnivore diet for 6 months, and I've still been paying the cost of that 6-month journey with carnivore diet. So I myself in my 30s developed basically an autoimmune condition because of the food I was eating that was traditionally supposed to be very clean and healthy, organic, grass-fed, locally sourced, all that, and that ended up making me sick. So if I'm in my 30s, what other kinds of conditions out there are happening? Well, there's things like rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, even Alzheimer's is happening to people at a younger and younger age. It's really terrifying, actually. So there's a need more and more right now to try and find some solutions to what's going on. How can we mitigate or stop this onslaught of chronic illness? It affects everybody. So today, main things that we're really going to cover here, is really looking at what is it like to live with a chronic disease, right? I hope none of you ever have to have a chronic illness. I don't want that for anybody, but we should always, I guess, pray for the best and plan for the worst. Chronic illness is a more and more common affliction than ever before. It has to do with many factors like the environment, our food, our stress, our isolation, our social isolation. All these things play a role in that development. So conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's, Alzheimer's, and many others can significantly impact one's quality of life. However, recent advancements in medical technology have opened up new possibilities for managing these particular conditions. In this video, we are going to explore how the vagus nerve and stimulation technology can be utilized to help individuals cope with chronic disease, particularly autoimmune conditions. Now, I will just say a little disclaimer here. Nothing I'm saying here should be taken as a recommendation for care. Obviously the standard boilerplate disclaimer. I'm not making recommendations here. I'm simply just sharing with people who are observing what some options could be. And obviously, don't ever take my word for it. I'm just one person. I'm as fallible as the next person, right? So I always encourage people to still consult with their own doctor, still consult with their trusted hospital care person, because they're going to know your full and complete medical history. I can't know what your full medical history is just by doing a one-way video presentation. So please check with a specialist before you dive into, again, vagus nerve stimulation is medical technology. It's not a consumer fun. We're going to have fun times. It's not fun times. It is fun times, but it's not fun times because you are doing medical treatments. So that's my disclaimer. Obviously be intelligent as much as you can. So let's start here. So let's first just get a little on the same page with what is the vagus nerve. How can we understand the vagus nerve? There are lots of ways to think about it. There are some ways that are more insightful than others. So as we know, the vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in the body. It connects the brain to various organs. I've posted pictures about this endlessly in this Facebook group. So, look up any of those pictures. You'll see just how extensive the vagus nerve is. The vagus nerve regulates crucial bodily functions, such as your heart rate, if it's too fast, if it's too slow, digestion, dysmotility, gastroparesis can happen when your vagus nerve is failing, and inflammation. Inflammation is the biggest killer of people on the planet. The biggest illness of heart failure pretty much only happens in people who have a high and elevated level of inflammation in their body. Diabetes, also considered an autoimmune condition by some experts more and more these days. Alzheimer's is also now considered to be type 3 diabetes because it's also an inflammatory condition. The one thing that you can stimulate in your body, the vagus nerve and the spleen and the femur, which we'll talk about today, are those three key areas that can help mitigate and reverse and reduce inflammation damage in your body. So it's pretty important. Researchers have found, and practicing clinicians and professionals such as myself have found time and time again, that stimulating the vagus nerve can have profound effects on your overall health and well-being. Full stop. So it is really, really crucial. I think that you should have something in your life, in your day, that does some form of vagus nerve stimulation. Boom. Okay. So when we talk about an autoimmune condition, this is kind of what happens. An autoimmune condition is when your own native natural immune system believes that there's something really bad going on in your body, and it starts to attack the unhealthy cells or even healthy cells. An autoimmune condition sometimes cannot discriminate between what is good and what is bad, and that's where autoimmune conditions get really dangerous, is because your body starts to treat your own healthy neurons and cells throughout your body, your heart tissue, your pancreas tissue, your stomach, your digestive tract, your neurons, and your brain as targets to be marked for death. That's called apoptosis. So immune overreaction can have that effect and can be deadly. So you really have to be careful. You do not want to develop an autoimmune disease. And if you do develop an autoimmune disease, this video right here will help you find pathways out of an autoimmune condition. So currently there is no cure. There's no official cure for an autoimmune disease. But managing inflammation is the key to reducing symptoms and improving quality of life. So that really is the only known treatment. When you develop an autoimmune condition, you have to do everything in your power to help reduce levels of inflammation in your body. That can put you into remission, and then you can maintain remission for the rest of your life. So that's actually where we're at right now with autoimmune conditions. It's pretty sad, but that's the best that we have right now. So vagus nerve stimulation, otherwise known as VNS, has emerged as a promising therapy for autoimmune conditions. By either electrically or using ultrasound, you can stimulate the vagus nerve. It is possible to modulate the body's own innate natural inflammatory response. You can modulate vagus nerve tone to modulate your inflammatory conditions, which is really cool. This stimulation can help reduce the severity of symptoms associated with these autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, and even Alzheimer's. So cool. So now that we got that out of the way, let's jump to the next chapter here. Boom. So let's talk a little bit about the science behind VNS. Like, how do we know that this is something that can help? Well, there's been a lot of research. The vagus nerve has been known about now for hundreds of years, actually thousands of years technically. Some of the old ancient Roman doctors, Galen, for instance, Galen, was the first human anatomist that published his results, and he talks about the vagus nerve specifically. This is 500 BC. He's doing autopsies on patients and finding, wow, each one of these patients has this massive single nerve network that runs down both sides of the neck, and it seems to connect to every major organ. So they started to hypothesize that the vagus nerve, when stimulated, would release a white, clear, milky fluid, and they called that stuff vagus stuff. Literally just like Vegas stuff. That's what the vagus nerve produces. We now know that when the vagus nerve is stimulated, it produces and secretes acetylcholine. So the vagus stuff is acetylcholine. That's the neurotransmitter that the vagus nerve uses to calm you down, okay? So vagus nerve stimulation works by sending some form of stimulation, usually ultrasound or electricity, to the vagus nerve, which then communicates with the brain and other organs. These impulses will trigger the release of neurotransmitters such as acetylcholine, which have anti-inflammatory properties naturally. By activating the vagus nerve, VNS can help regulate the immune response and reduce inflammation in the body. So I think that's very, very promising stuff. Sorry, I'm trying to paste this here. Boom. 1 second. Doop, 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 boop. Okay. So next area of concern for us would be clinical trials and results. So where has VNS been trialed? It's been trialed in a lot of different conditions, and it's found to be largely very successful. So numerous clinical trials have been conducted to evaluate the effectiveness of vagus nerve stimulation in managing chronic diseases. In a study involving patients with rheumatoid arthritis, researchers found that VNS led to a significant reduction in disease activity and improved quality of life substantially. Similar positive outcomes have been observed in individuals with Crohn's disease, where VNS has shown to decrease inflammation and alleviate symptoms actually quite fast. So VNS is a very powerful intervention to use in the case of an autoimmune chronic health disorder, or a disaster, really. Furthermore, preliminary studies exploring the use of VNS in Alzheimer's patients have shown promising results. While more research is always needed, early findings suggest that VNS may help slow down cognitive decline and improve memory function in individuals with that neurodegenerative disorder, with dementia, and general OCD, ADHD, different kinds of disorders of consciousness, or even just forgetfulness can go away if you stimulate your vagus nerve. So it's very powerful. You know, this stuff is it's not a toy. We really wouldn't have what we have today if it weren't for the work of, TK, exactly. It is a huge, huge field with a ton of potential. So we wouldn't be where we're at if it weren't for the United States government funneling a lot of money into exploring how does this work, right? That's where a lot of the money is coming from. So let's talk about stimulation and technology advancements. So every year it seems that there's new advancements in the vagus nerve stimulation technology department. Just this last weekend, I was in San Diego and I was demonstrating on stage a brand new ultrasound device that stimulates your vagus nerve right in your ear. It's a custom-made device just that fits your own ear. It's custom printed. And that is a huge leap forward in the development of vagus nerve stimulation technology. I hope everybody watching will, at some point in their lives, be able to experience what that feels like. With an 8 megahertz transducer right against your vagus nerve, you can have immediate and lasting results for like 24 or more hours from a single 2 to 3 minute session, right? So the technology advancements that are coming in vagus nerve world are substantial. So you'll find something that works for you at some point in your life. I'm certain of that. Some of the advancements also tend to make VNS more accessible and convenient for patients. Traditional vagus nerve stimulation devices from 20 years ago would typically involve an implant into the body that would wrap around the vagus nerve. And those would typically deliver just electrical stimulation to the nerve itself. However, newer non-invasive techniques such as what's called transcutaneous vagus nerve stimulation, or TVNS, have emerged. These methods involve using external devices to stimulate the vagus nerve without the need for surgery. I think that's really, really key. One of the other things that you have to consider if you're going to go for a VNS implant in particular is that there's a battery on the device. And that battery, as we know with phones and laptops and different kinds of devices, is that batteries from time to time need to be replaced. So they have to explant, take out the core battery and put a new one in every 10 to 12 years. So a decade is a long time, but just know that if you do go for a VNS implant, those don't last forever. They last for generally 10 to 12 years, depending on how much they're on or off. But it's pretty amazing to have a piece of technology that can last consistently for 10 years, for a whole decade. That's pretty remarkable. Some of the other advancements in technology that I'll mention are in ultrasound. So currently, I oversee a number of projects that are really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with stimulating the vagus nerve with ultrasound. Some of the applications we're looking at currently are just treating a wide swath of what we just consider something called vagus nerve dysfunction. So if somebody comes to our consortium and says, hey, I think I have symptoms of vagus nerve dysfunction, what we'll typically do is have an intake and do a soft exploration to see, are the symptoms that you're having, are those really vagus nerve related, or are they something else? And if there's something else, we'll absolutely tell you and put you in the right direction. However, if it does seem to be a VNS, a vagus nerve specific problem, then one of the things that we can do is administer an at-home treatment regimen for vagus nerve dysfunction. I haven't posted it in a while, so I'll do it now. If you want a soft evaluation of your vagus nerve function, you can schedule a complimentary call with us here. Boom. go.oncehub.com/Vegas10. So if you do want a soft analysis of what's going on with your vagus nerve, I highly recommend that you do schedule that call, because, while I might not have gone through medical school, I am not a doctor. I have spent over 12 years now working in the field of ultrasound neuromodulation. And I spent 6+ years specifically in the application of ultrasound on the vagus nerve. And I do work with people, and I am involved in academic research, institutional research, clinical research, practical research, and application of this technology. So I do know a lot about how this nerve works. Also, just running this Facebook group has put me up close and very personal with many of the ways that the body can go sideways. And so we've gotten to see the pairing of VNS plus XYZ symptoms and conditions. So if you suspect that you do have something wrong with your vagus nerve, then I would highly suggest just, again, I always recommend do your own research, keep on reading online. But at some point in that journey, you're going to want to speak to someone who has a very high level perspective on all of this. And that 10-minute call scheduling link that I have in the chat, is a fantastic way to get real answers from a real person. Because Google is just Google. Google is a search engine, right? And what Google is going to do for you is send you down a long, long rabbit hole of research and articles and published studies. And it's going to be kind of hard to differentiate between what's real, what's not. So these 10-minute calls, I do them completely for free. I highly encourage everybody watching. If you haven't already done one of those calls, I think a lot of you in the chat here have. But if you're watching the replay, then yeah, do yourself one of the biggest favors, one of the biggest clarity-giving favors to yourself is to just schedule the call. They take no more than 10 to 15 minutes. We have an intake form, and we go over your results. We'll be able to tell you pretty substantially and very quickly, yes, what you're saying to us sounds absolutely like a vagus nerve specific issue, and we can tell you one way or the other if there are solutions on market right now. If we don't believe that there's a direction that we can help you in, we will point you in the right direction. I've sent people to St. Jude's Medical Hospital, to the Scripps Medical Hospital. I've sent people on these calls to a number of different hospitals when I was really more certain that their condition would need some more specialization than just vagus nerve stimulation. These are like those pretty severe cases, right? These are those ones that actually might need a VNS implant. There are some cases where I get on the phone, and my honest opinion in those cases is I would really encourage you to explore the VNS implant option. I have said that before. I don't expect to convert everybody on the planet into an ultrasound VNS person. That's just never going to happen. But if I can help a lot of people along the way getting answers and getting clarity, that's why I like doing these calls. So like I said, our calendar is pretty open. We've still got some residual work we've got to do over the next week as a result of our conference speaking engagement in San Diego this weekend. But we can always make time for a 10-minute call, especially if you came from the Facebook group. You absolutely get priority on those calls 100% of the time. So yeah, do yourself a big favor and schedule that 10-minute call. Now let's do this. So what I want to do here is just talk a little bit about kind of the conclusion of today's talk. And then after the conclusion, I'm going to go a little bit more into some applications of ultrasound into novel places that we've seen are getting some really good results. So you'll want to stick around and pay attention for that. But basically, in conclusion, the vagus nerve and stimulation technology do offer an exciting area of possibilities for managing chronic diseases, particularly autoimmune conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's, and Alzheimer's. By harnessing the power of the vagus nerve through stimulation, either, you can do stimulation of the vagus nerve naturally or unnaturally. All our options all have different degrees of effectiveness, of course. It is possible to modulate the body's inflammatory response and alleviate symptoms associated with those conditions. As research continues to advance in this field, we can hope for even more effective and accessible treatments for chronic diseases into the future. So we are on the cusp of a pretty substantial shift in healthcare. I have a lot of people who do enjoy their calls with me, and they do enjoy this kind of out-of-the-box thinking, where what if we treated your conditions like... So let's talk a little bit about ultrasound VNS. So there's certainly a lot of VNS devices that do electrical stimulation, but there are also a ton of options when it comes to ultrasound stimulation today. As I was saying earlier, back when I was in San Diego last weekend, I was able to demonstrate on stage a new device that stimulates right on the ear of the vagus nerve. So your vagus nerve runs partially through your ear. It has a branch that goes up and terminates in the auricular concha region of the left ear and the right ear. And you can stimulate that with ultrasound. And the effects are substantially better than ear clip electrical stimulation. So if you've been considering going the route of electrical stimulation, again, schedule that 10-minute call. We do have these devices available. So if you want to purchase one of these, we can handle that on that phone call. We'll typically do a 10-minute call, and then we'll do a 60-minute call. That gives us enough time to go through all of the details with you and gives you time to really kind of chew on it and make a decision, or think about it, whatever you need to do to make that decision. But yeah, we have in-ear vagus nerve stimulators. We have body stimulators. We've got different kinds of organ-specific stimulators. So we've got lots of options for people, but we don't like to just make blanket recommendations. Given this is a medical field, that's an irresponsible thing to do. While it may seem on your side, it's easier. You just post links to go buy now. We don't believe that everybody walking on the planet needs this technology. A select few should be the priority. I think that we should focus on people who are having real, life-threatening, existential crisis-causing chronic illnesses. Yep, right? So that should be our focus. Yeah, and TK, you agree? Absolutely, 100%. So there's 3 areas I want to mention that are highly promising candidates for future work in stimulation of the vagus nerve and using ultrasound. So the 3 I'm going to give are a combination of those 2 things. The first place is going to be cervical vagus nerve stimulation with ultrasound. That's going to be right on the neck, right here in the cervical branch. That is a fantastic spot because you send signals up into the brain and down into the body. That can ameliorate a lot of symptoms of vagus nerve dysfunction right there. The second area that is most exciting is the end termination branch that goes to your spleen on the left side of your body. With ultrasound, you can direct sound waves into the spleen, activate the vagus nerve, and that is actually the effective dose to reduce inflammation in the body. So this is really incredible. This is like cutting edge stuff. And then most recently, one other area that we've been exploring with ultrasound users is the stimulation of bone marrow in the femur of your legs. So in your femur, which is down on each legs between your hip and your knees, that one bone contains the factory that produces red blood cells, stem cells, T cells, B cells, and macrophages. And did I mention it produces mesenchymal stem cells, the most coveted stem cell in your entire body is produced in your femur. And we've been finding that focused, targeted ultrasound stimulated to the femur has been having, honestly, I've been working with clients for years with ultrasound. It was only until we recently approved and loaded the protocol to the devices for the femur that we've been seeing incredible shifts in people's health. Like, I literally think we're giving people the ability to have exogenous stem cells built in their own body, spurned on by the stimulation of the femur, which is nuts. Jody, you have a good question. Do you have any clinics or professionals in Western Canada that you deal with? The only doctor that I know in Canada is Dr. Habib Naziz. He wrote a book about the vagus nerve. But yeah, his last name is Haziz. He's in Eastern Canada, more in Toronto, Ottawa, not on the West, but he can work with you if you want a doctor to care for you. The other option as well is, of course, we are able to internationally get ultrasounds to people anywhere in the world in our phase 1 and phase 2 program. So we actually have a number of clients that are actually in Western Canada right now who are enjoying their own VNS devices. So, again, clinics are hit and miss. Just because something's a clinic doesn't mean that they're going to know a lot about the vagus nerve, and they might not know a lot about this, right? If you look at the approval of the Facebook group, I approve something like 80 people every few days. The Facebook group grows by 20 to 30 people every single day. A lot of those people joining now are doctors, practicing doctors, and they say I've been taught such a Western philosophy of medicine that I never knew about the vagus nerve, and I'm here to learn from you, Sterling, your expert take on the vagus nerve. So that's, our numbers are not padded. These are not bots. These are real people that are coming into the Facebook group. I double check for any bot-like activity. So a lot of doctors do come to me to ask me the questions that they can then translate to their students or their clients or their patients. So yeah, I would say if you're outside of the US, that shouldn't be a deterrent to at least scheduling that 10-minute call. And it's never been an issue for us. We have great regulatory paperwork that allows us to get technology like this anywhere in the world. So yeah, if VNS is something that you want to try and you want to do it the safest way with ultrasound, scheduling that 10-minute call will be the first step in taking that direction and taking that action. So that would be my recommendation, is to scroll back up to the chat and do schedule a 10-minute call with me. But that's a great question. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to share. Key takeaways here is that there are locations in the body that when you stimulate, you can have some incredible benefits to your health and your body. I can attest to it. My clients can attest to it. There is some incredible stuff going on with how the vagus nerve is functioning. So with that, I will end it here on YouTube. Thank you guys for watching on YouTube. I will see you guys tomorrow. Same time, same place. Best live stream ever, of course. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.